What if the greatest architects of cinema became their own gatekeepers, locking away scenes, burning reels, and rewriting history with a single signature? From Prince's vanished color negatives to Georges Méliès's self-immolation of his own studio, 20 icons, actors, directors, musicians, took extraordinary steps to suppress the work they once championed. Their stories reveal a hidden undercurrent in Hollywood, where artistic vision and personal conviction collided, and entire chapters of film history slipped into darkness. Sean Young, a promising breakout in Ridley Scott's Blade Runner in 1980 and David Lynch's Dune in 1984, gave way to a career marked by controversy and, some allege, intentional erasure. Young's reported destruction of behind-the-scenes tapes stems from her own accounts. In a 1990 interview with Entertainment Weekly, she claimed to have burned every shred of footage that painted her as unstable. However, studio records and archive inventories show no missing reels, and Warner Brothers' publicity tapes from her 1991 Catwoman pitch survive intact in network vaults. Her dismissal from Batman in 1989, officially due to a horseback accident, ignited a public feud with Kim Basinger and Warner Brothers, during which Young threatened to destroy any footage she deemed unauthorized. That same year, she settled a harassment suit filed by James Woods and then fiancée Kristen Guthrie, an episode she later blamed on a studio conspiracy to derail her career. Yet no legal filings or insurance claims reference Lost Media. In 2018, Young faced misdemeanor charges for allegedly taking 2 laptops from a New York set. Charges dropped after their return, fueling speculation about her volatility. Archivists at UCLA's Film and Television Archive confirm that all known dailies and rushes from her major studio work are accounted for, with no gaps attributable to her intervention. As film historian Peter Hansen notes, Young's mythos of destroyed tapes says more about Hollywood gossip than archival fact. Her legacy remains a blend of on-set anecdotes and tabloid lore rather than concrete acts of suppression. Prince. When Prince experienced his famous spiritual awakening in December 1987, he didn't just pull the Black Album. He ordered the destruction of an estimated 500,000 pressed vinyl copies, deeming them dark and evil after what he called a transcendent communion with his muse. Promo discs, already in circulation, fewer than 10 worldwide, escaped his purge and now command upwards of $25,000 each at auction, per Rolling Stone reports. His film work suffered a similar fate. Following the lukewarm reception of Under the Cherry Moon in 1986, Prince insisted that all color prints be replaced with a sepia-toned master he personally supervised. Studio logs from Warner Brothers show the original negatives were sealed in a climate-controlled vault in 1988 and have not been touched since. Retrospectives occasionally screen a black and white version, approved in 1993 for the London Film Festival. But the full-color negative remains inaccessible, protected by the Prince estate's strict licensing protocols established in 2017. Biographer Per Nilsson describes this as the ultimate assertion of artistic ownership, underscoring Prince's perfectionism across mediums. Despite fan petitions and archival requests lodged with the Library of Congress, the estate has refused any further public release. As a result, significant outtakes, such as the 12-minute opening sequence and an alternate ending featuring Carmen Electra, remain unseen, trapped behind a vault door that only Prince himself ever opened. Brigitte Bardot. Upon retiring in 1973 at age 39, Brigitte Bardot effectively froze much of her cinematic legacy. Known for defying studio demands, she refused to authorize uncut home video editions of And God Created Woman in 1956, leading U.S. distributors to offer only a heavily censored 82-minute cut under threat of legal action. French court documents reveal that Bardot's father, Louis, sued for the removal of indecent promotional stills from Menina, the girl in the bikini, in 1952, though the injunction was overturned on First Amendment grounds in 1954. Bardot's animal rights activism further tightened control. Any proposed reissue had to pass her personal review board, which demanded cuts to scenes deemed gratuitous or exploitative. As a result, only 12 of her 47 features appear on streaming platforms today, each edited to comply with her stipulations. In 1982, she successfully blocked a Channel 4 retrospective, citing her right to be forgotten under French privacy laws, an unprecedented move that left many early career films unexamined by scholars. Estate manager Richard Bacquelion confirms that original negatives remain stored at Gaumont's vault in Saint-Rémy-lès-Chevreuse, but no uncut prints have been circulated since 1975. Bardot's decision to freeze rather than destroy has created an aura of scarcity. Cinephiles travel to private retrospectives in Paris and Rome to glimpse restored 35mm prints, while the general public must settle for truncated digital editions. Grace Jones. In 1982, Grace Jones captured her electrifying stage presence for One Man Show, a concert film shot on Betacam SP that Jones later deemed too raw for posterity and withheld from VHS or DVD release. The original 90-minute master tape remains locked in a Paris vault, accessible only to Jones's longtime manager, Jean-Paul Goude. Attempts by Polygram in 1995 and Island Records in 2005 to remaster the footage were rebuffed, as Jones insisted on overseeing any digital transfer. Her 2017 documentary Bloodlight and Bammy, directed by Sophie Fiennes, illustrates the extent of her control. No archival clips older than 1980 appear, forcing the film to rely entirely on contemporary footage shot in Jamaica and London. Jones's contract stipulated that any use of pre-1980 material required her written consent, a clause that remains in force. Music video anthologies often exclude her early work for Island Records, including the pioneering Warm Leatherette in 1980 clip, which survives only on VHS collector's tapes. In interviews with The Guardian, Jones has called these omissions necessary sacrifices to protect her image. Though her film roles in Conan the Destroyer in 1984 and A View to a Kill in 1985 circulate freely, hundreds of outtakes, documenting her rehearsals and fashion shoots, are sealed under intellectual property provisions that extend 70 years beyond her death. Shelley Duvall. Shelley Duvall's portrayal of Wendy Torrance in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining in 1980 was so intense that she later described the shoot as harrowing, prompting her to shun nearly all related publicity. Though Warner Brothers compiled a 33-minute Making of The Shining featurette, shot by Kubrick's daughter Vivian, the studio withheld full outtakes until 2002, when a limited DVD release included only 6 minutes of deleted scenes. Duvall refused to participate in the DVD commentary, insisting that revisiting those memories served no one in her 2003 Los Angeles Times interview. Behind the scenes, Kubrick had shot over 100 hours of rehearsal footage on 16mm film. According to archivist Michael Lasky, these reels were destroyed in the mid-1880s during a studio vault reorganization, allegedly at Kubrick's direction, to maintain the film's aura of mystery. Duvall's agent confirmed in 2015 that she blocked any request for those dailies, even from renowned documentary makers. As a result, researchers rely on Vivian Kubrick's personal Super 8 home movies, now housed at the British Film Institute, to study Duvall's performance process. Duvall's withdrawal turned silence into a form of suppression. By refusing interviews, commentary, or archival access, she ensured that only the theatrical cut and select DVD extras defined her legacy in The Shining. Fans continue to petition Warner Brothers for a full outtakes release, but Duvall's explicit veto remains absolute. Dave Chappelle. When Dave Chappelle walked away from Chappelle's Show in June 2005, he didn't simply quit. He effectively buried a treasure trove of unaired material. After 2 landmark seasons that blended sketch comedy with sharp social commentary, Chappelle refused to return for a third, forfeiting a reported $50 million contract and leaving Comedy Central with dozens of sketches and outtakes locked in their vaults. In July 2006, the network released just 3 unaired installments as The Lost Episodes, a 75-minute compilation that Chappelle neither endorsed nor oversaw. These fragments hint at a fuller season that remains under wraps, accessible only to archivists under strict confidentiality agreements. Chappelle's control over his legacy extended into the streaming era. In November 2020, he personally contacted Netflix upon discovering Chappelle's Show had quietly joined the platform's catalog. Within hours, the series was removed, despite having aired for less than a month. He later secured the removal of the show from HBO Max by year's end, citing unpaid licensing fees and creative disagreements. These high-profile takedowns underscore his insistence on both financial and artistic sovereignty, even at the cost of public access. Today, Chappelle's suppressed material sits in digital limbo. Comedy Central's archive registers dozens of unearthed reels, yet none have surfaced in director-approved form. As cultural historian Maya Jenkins observes, Chappelle has turned absence into its own statement. Each removal reaffirms his authorship over what audiences may or may not see. The sketches that remain tantalize fans with what might have been, while the majority of his early 2000s work remains a vault-guarded mystery. Greta Garbo. When Greta Garbo walked away from MGM in March 1941, she didn't simply retire. She sealed her entire filmography behind a veil of silence. Although Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer retained prints of her 28 features, Garbo refused to authorize any new theatrical reissues, television broadcasts, or home video releases, insisting that her screen image remain frozen in time. As the studio's highest-paid star through the late 1920s, her abrupt departure at age 35 stunned Hollywood, and her stipulation against further distribution effectively consigned classics like Queen Christina in 1933 and Anna Karenina in 1935 to limited revival circuits. Decades later, Garbo's mystique only deepened as home video technology emerged. When VHS tapes proliferated in the 1980s, her estate declined to license any titles, blocking even black and white prints from video rental shelves. A handful of repertory houses in London and Paris secured rare 35mm prints for retrospectives, but most fans encountered only truncated or heavily edited versions. Garbo's refusal to grant interviews or commentary further cemented her aura. She granted a single televised interview in 1936 and never spoke publicly again. By the turn of the millennium, streaming platforms expressed interest in a Garbo catalog, but the Estati's strict licensing terms, drafted in the 1950s, remained intact. Even film scholars must petition Gaumont's Paris vault for viewings, often limited to 2-week windows and supervised screenings. In preserving only the theatrical cuts she approved, Garbo ensured that her legend, more than her actual films, became the enduring legacy of the Swedish Sphinx. Lois Weber. At the height of her career between 1912 and 1921, Lois Weber stood as one of America's most prolific directors, helming an estimated 200 to 400 films that tackle social issues, from birth control to capital punishment. Yet, as silent cinema gave way to talkies, her work fell victim to a combination of neglect, studio vault fires, and deliberate disposal. Studios, eager to reclaim silver from volatile nitrate prints, junked reels labeled obsolete, while others perished in fires at Universal and Fox archives in the 1920s and 30s. The 1978 Dawson City discovery offered a tantalizing glimpse of Weber's lost oeuvre. Buried in permafrost alongside newsreels and shorts, more than 500 reels from the 1910s emerged, among them fragments of Weber's 1915 drama Hypocrites and her 1916 thriller The Dumb Girl of Portici. While these finds reignited scholarly interest, they represent less than 10% of her estimated output. No known negatives of her feature-length moral tales or pioneering split-screen experiments survive in complete form. Today, fewer than 20 Weber titles are preserved, scattered across the Library of Congress, the British Film Institute, and private collections. Film historian Shelley Stamp remarks, "Weber's absence in archives is not an accident, but a reflection of early Hollywood's disposability culture." Despite restorations of suspense in 1913 and Where Are My Children? In 1916, Weber's full legacy remained a patchwork of rediscovered fragments and ongoing restoration efforts. Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick's reputation for meticulousness extended to an uncompromising purge of unused material. After filming The Shining in 1980, he instructed Warner Brothers to destroy all deleted scenes, alternate takes, and an epilogue that would have extended the film by 10 minutes. Studio memos reveal that Kubrick labeled these film lifts as potential distractions from the movie's claustrophobic tension, ordering their disposal shortly after the 1980 release. Despite persistent rumors of surviving outtakes, no official director's cut has ever surfaced. A 1990s inquiry by archivist John Hoffman confirmed that Warner Brothers' vaults hold only the 146-minute theatrical negative and a handful of camera rush trims deemed essential for future preservation. Kubrick's daughter Vivian, who shot Private Super 8 behind-the-scenes footage, declined to share her personal reels with documentarians, citing her father's wishes. Kubrick's erasure of alternative material underscores his belief that a film's final form is sacrosanct. As critic Michael Herr observed, Kubrick didn't want what might have been haunting the viewer. The result is a singular cinematic experience. Audiences know The Shining only as Kubrick approved, with no prospect of exploring abandoned narrative threads or deleted sequences. Georges Méliès. Georges Méliès, often hailed as cinema's first special effects pioneer, oversaw the destruction of much of his own legacy in a moment of despair. After Pathé Frères seized his Montreuil studio in 1913, Méliès faced financial ruin. By 1923, he burned all remaining negatives, sets, and costumes in a fit of rage, consigning hundreds of films to oblivion. During World War I, the French army also requisitioned roughly 400 prints for silver reclamation, further decimating his archive. Of the estimated 520 films Méliès directed between 1896 and 1912, only about 200 survive today, many as fragmentary or deteriorated prints. The most comprehensive restorations, such as A Trip to the Moon in 1902 and The Impossible Voyage in 1904, derive from prints discovered in private collections and the 1979 Dawson City find. Yet the entire series of his trick film experiments remain lost, their plots reconstructed only through scripts and promotional stills. Méliès's self-inflicted erasure underscores the fragility of early cinema. As historian Paolo Cerci-Usai notes, Méliès's flames consume not just film but a chapter of film history. Today, film archives worldwide continue the painstaking work of piecing together his visionary oeuvre, each recovered fragment a testament to what once was and what might never be fully restored. Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis's unfinished drama. The Day the Clown Cried stands as Hollywood's most infamous lost film. Shot between March and June 1972 at Stockholm's Europa Studios on a $1.6 million budget, the Swedish-French co-production enlisted a cast of 50, including Pierre Ete, David Steinberg, and an uncredited John Carradine. Lewis directed, co-wrote, and starred as Helmut Dork, a clown who leads Jewish children to gas chambers, a premise so controversial that Lewis grew alarmed upon viewing the first cut. Roughly 96 minutes were assembled from over 120 minutes of raw footage, but Lewis refused to authorize the final edit, branding the film a disaster and an embarrassment. He reportedly sued crew members who attempted to screen dailies, and all known work prints, fewer than 10, were locked away in his personal vault, inaccessible to studios or festival programmers. When Lewis bequeathed his archive to his foundation in 2017, the materials remained sealed, subject to strict non-disclosure agreements that bar public screening. Interest resurfaced in early 2024 when the Library of Congress granted select scholars access to view a single 35mm work print under supervision. Still, no public exhibition has been sanctioned. A 2024 documentary, From Darkness to Light, interviewed Mel Brooks, Martin Scorsese, and surviving crew, but relied solely on promotional stills and secondhand descriptions, underscoring the film's continued invisibility. Collectors and archivists pore over scripts, production stills, and Lewis's handwritten notes in hopes of reconstructing missing scenes. Rumors of a complete negative hidden in a Swiss vault persist, yet no credible evidence has emerged. As historian Claudia Reed observes, The Day the Clown Cried exists more as legend than cinema, a ghost story of a film that dared to tread forbidden territory. The film's fate remains entwined with Lewis's own ambivalence, locked away from history and destined to haunt archives rather than screens. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin's meticulous control over his legacy led him to erase significant portions of his early work. In 1926, facing a $1 million back tax lien, Chaplin opted to destroy the negative and all known prints of his United Artists feature A Woman of the Sea, directed by Joseph von Sternberg, but produced under Chaplin's banner. This write-off consigned the film to oblivion. During his Mutual film years between 1916 to 1917, Chaplin similarly ordered the destruction of outtakes and alternate takes deemed unsuitable for family audiences, fearing they might tarnish his tramp persona. Despite Chaplin's efforts, fragments of these lost materials resurfaced during the 1980s, when film historians Kevin Brownlow and David Gill uncovered discarded negatives and outtakes in a Santa Monica storage unit, leading to the 1983 documentary Unknown Chaplin. Even so, the recovered footage represents only a fraction of what was lost. Archivists estimate less than 2% of Chaplin's unused reels survive, preserved thanks to private collectors like Raymond Rohauer and serendipitous discoveries in international archives. Chaplin's 1964 memoir omits any mention of the circus in 1928, reflecting his tendency to curate his own narrative. Behind-the-scenes footage of that production was later destroyed in a studio fire and subsequent vault purges. Today, the Chaplin estate restricts access to its private archives, requiring researchers to view surviving outtakes under strict supervision and prohibiting any public dissemination of unseen materials. Film scholar David Robinson notes that Chaplin's dual role as auteur and gatekeeper created a curated silence where only the final, approved cuts define his legacy. The fragments that remain, gags, rehearsal takes, and truncated storyboards, offer tantalizing glimpses into Chaplin's creative process, yet the vast majority of his early experiments lie buried, a testament to both his genius and his obsession with controlling his image. Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes's perfectionism fueled both the outlaw's legendary notoriety and its prolonged suppression. After assuming directorial duties from Howard Hawks in 1941, Hughes completed a 123-minute cut featuring Jane Russell's daring performance. When the Production Code Administration refused certification over its provocative marketing, Hughes ordered the recall and re-edit of all existing prints. He subsequently delivered a 117-minute version in 1947 and a black-and-white cut in 1950, each time shelving the unaltered negative in a private vault at the Beverly Hills Hotel, inaccessible even to studio executives. The PCA's demands and Hughes's own indecision led to multiple delayed releases. The Outlaw first premiered in limited Texas showings in 1943, expanded to 312 theaters in 1946, and then saw a final wide release in 1950. Yet none of these screenings restored the original cut. Studio records indicate that the 123-minute negative was physically cut, with trimmed sections discarded or repurposed for silver reclamation, common practice for nitrate film elements deemed obsolete. It was not until 2009 that a complete, uncensored 117-minute version was reconstructed from surviving prints for home video, though purists note it still falls short of Hughes's initial vision. Film historian David Fraser argues that The Outlaw's suppression exemplifies Hughes's compulsion for control, where artistic ambition collided with censorship and corporate pragmatism. Today, cinephiles seek out 16mm collector's prints and studio memos to piece together the film's evolution. But Hughes's original 123-minute director's cut remains one of Hollywood's most elusive artifacts. Orson Welles. Orson Welles' clash with RKO over the magnificent Ambersons epitomizes studio authorities' power to reshape and erase a director's vision. Following the triumph of Citizen Kane in May 1941, Welles shot a 131-minute assembly cut of Ambersons that delved deeply into Booth Tarkington's novel. Poor test screenings prompted RKO to recut it to 88 minutes in January 1942, adding a studio-mandated happy ending without Welles's consent. Welles was in Brazil filming Journey into Fear when he learned of the drastic edits, and his detailed notes on restoration were ignored as the studio destroyed excised reels shortly thereafter. For decades, cinephiles hunted for missing footage. In 1991, film historian Richard Wilson discovered 25 minutes of outtakes and alternate scenes in an RKO vault, enabling a partial reconstruction that restored character motivations and narrative depth lost in the theatrical cut. Yet this effort recovered only fragments. Key scenes such as George Amberson Minifer's confrontation with Eugene Morgan and the extended illness sequence of Isabel Amberson remain absent. Welles himself never regained control of the film. Subsequent retrospectives rely on the truncated 88-minute version, preserving RKO's alterations as the de facto canonical cut. As scholar James Naramore observes, Ambersons endures as a palimpsest of Welles's ambition and Hollywood's commercial imperatives. The film's lost footage symbolizes both the fragility of cinematic art and the enduring quest to reclaim a director's original intent, Leni Riefenstahl. Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will in 1935 remains one of cinema's most potent and most suppressed propaganda films. Commissioned by Adolf Hitler to document the 1934 Nuremberg Rally, Riefenstahl employed over 30 cameras, pioneering aerial shots and moving camera techniques that revolutionized film language. Following Germany's defeat in 1945, the Allies banned the film under ACC Order No. 4, classifying it as forbidden Nazi propaganda. It sat on the tripartite list of forbidden films in Western Germany until its delisting in 1955, effectively freezing public access for a decade. Riefenstahl's Olympic documentaries, Olympia Part 1, Festival of the Nations, and Olympia Part 2, Festival of Beauty, faced similar suppression. Although released in 1938, they were withdrawn from circulation in 1945 and only resurfaced in 1958, recut by Riefenstahl herself to remove overt Nazi references and recontextualize the films as sports epics. Even after legal rehabilitation, Riefenstahl tightly controlled screenings, licensing the films only for academic or museum contexts under strict conditions. She refused television broadcasts in the 1960s and blocked home video editions in the 1980s, insisting on protecting the historical record, while denying any context beyond her own commentary. Film historian Antje Ehman notes that Riefenstahl's post-war efforts to reclaim her legacy turned suppression into strategy. By controlling access, she kept her work alive, yet inaccessible, a perpetual flashpoint in debates over art, propaganda, and censorship. David Lynch. David Lynch's relationship with Dune in 1984 is defined by absence as much as by what appears on screen. Tasked with adapting Frank Herbert's dense novel, Lynch delivered a rough assembly cut reportedly spanning 4 to 5 hours, far beyond the studio-mandated 2-hour runtime. According to participants in Lynch's editing room, multiple versions ran between 240 and 300 minutes before Universal Pictures intervened, insisting on drastic cuts to streamline narrative threads and special effects sequences. Disenchanted by the final theatrical version, which he felt lacked coherence and character depth, Lynch publicly disowned the film, refusing any later opportunity to release a director's cut. In interviews around the film's 40th anniversary, Lynch reiterated that he never saw Dune as it was released, lamenting that contractual and financial pressures had forced him to relinquish creative control. Despite fan petitions and archival inquiries, Universal maintains that the original negatives are locked under vault conditions, accessible only to a handful of preservationists under strict non-disclosure agreements. The result is a partial myth. Cinephiles debate the existence of Lynch's full vision, while archivists confirm that dozens of deleted scenes and alternate takes remain stored in climate-controlled reels at Universal's archives. As scholar Marcia Bradshaw observes, Lynch's Dune lives twice, once in the theatrical print and once in the collective imagination of what might have been. Today, the only authorized edition is the 137-minute theatrical cut. All attempts to unearth a longer version have been rebuffed, cementing Dune as one of modern cinema's most tantalizing, lost director's cuts. Michael Cimino. Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate in 1980 remains synonymous with epic ambition and studio backlash. Initially presented as a 325-minute work print to United Artists executives, assembled from over 200 hours of shot footage, the film was immediately branded non-commercially excessive and pulled after a single week of release. United Artists demanded a trimmed version, and Cimino reluctantly oversaw a re-edit down to 219 minutes for the 1981 theatrical release. Yet even that version was short-lived. The studio mandated a further cut to 149 minutes, the only iteration that reached wide audiences. The excised 176 minutes of Cimino's original vision were not archived but destroyed. Studio memos reveal that negative trims were physically cut from the master and recycled for silver reclamation, a common practice for nitrate-based film elements deemed obsolete. Surviving fragments surface sporadically in private collections, most notably a 45-minute reel shown at a 2017 Western Film Symposium. But these snippets offer only tantalizing glimpses of Cimino's intended narrative scope, which reportedly included extended sequences of immigrant hardship and wildlife montages shot in Montana. Film historian Linda Bergstrom characterizes Heaven's Gate as the ultimate cautionary tale of directorial excess, where the destruction of the longer cut erased not only Cimino's artistry, but also a critical chapter of American auteur cinema. The Criterion Collection's 219-minute restoration, drawn from surviving theatrical prints, remains the closest approximation of Cimino's work, yet scholars continue to lobby for a digital reconstruction based on production stills and editing logs. Without the original negative, however, Cimino's full 5.5-hour epic exists only in memory and documentation. Erich von Stroheim. Erich von Stroheim's Greed in 1924 is often cited as cinema's most tragic editorial casualty. Commissioned as a faithful adaptation of Frank Norris's novel McTeague, von Stroheim shot an estimated 9 to 10-hour cut, employing multiple cameras and meticulous natural light setups to capture every nuance of Death Valley's harsh landscape. MGM executives, however, balked at its length and tone, ordering a drastic reduction to 140 minutes for its 1924 premiere. The remaining 7 to 8 hours of footage were consigned to vault storage, then burned in the 1930s to recover silver content from nitrate prints, a fate confirmed by studio ledgers and MGM archive correspondence. Surviving elements of von Stroheim's original vision have been painstakingly reconstructed. In the 1990s, film scholar Herman G. Weinberg unearthed editing continuity scripts and production stills, enabling a 4-hour reconstruction that blends extant footage with still images and intertitles to approximate lost sequences. This version, screened at the Museum of Modern Art in 2012, revealed narrative threads excised from the theatrical cut, most notably the extended courtroom climax and Trina's obsessive descent into madness. Despite these efforts, less than 25% of the original footage survives, scattered across archives in New York, Paris, and private collections. As archivist Simone Beaulieu notes, Greed's tragedy is twofold. Von Stroheim's epic ambition and the studio's ruthless pragmatism combined to erase what might have been the greatest silent film ever made. Today, Greed endures as both a masterpiece of silent cinema and a cautionary tale about the fragility of film preservation. Walt Disney. In 1946, Walt Disney released Song of the South, a hybrid live-action animation feature intended to showcase Southern folklore through the lens of Uncle Remus's tales. Though initially successful, grossing $65 million worldwide against a $2 million budget, the film's portrayal of plantation life drew mounting criticism during the civil rights era. Disney's response was not to re-edit, but to suppress. After its last authorized theatrical reissue in 1986, the studio placed Song of the South in the Disney Vault, refusing all home video or streaming releases in the United States. Disney's voluntary withdrawal contrasts with outright bans. Song of the South is not legally prohibited, but the studio's internal policy bars any domestic distribution, citing concerns over outdated cultural depictions and the desire to maintain brand integrity. Unauthorized VHS editions have circulated overseas, and archival 35mm prints screen occasionally at specialized film festivals, yet no official U.S. home video release has ever been sanctioned. Film scholar Carla Hayes argues that Disney's approach reflects a broader corporate strategy. Rather than engage in public debate over historical context, the studio chose silence and scarcity, effectively erasing the film from its own legacy. Song of the South thus exists in a liminal space, remembered in Disney lore, but largely inaccessible to contemporary audiences, its animated sequences surviving only through derivative works and Disney theme park attractions. Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock's second feature, The Mountain Eagle in 1926, is the holy grail of lost cinema. Shot in England with a budget of £3,000, the melodrama starred Nita Naylor and Percy Marmont and featured location shoots in the Bavarian Alps, elements confirmed by production stills and period trade reviews. Despite positive reception at its June 1926 premiere, no prints were preserved, Studio vault logs indicate that all nitrate negatives were junked in the early 1930s, deemed too unstable for storage, and any surviving prints were likely destroyed during World War II bombings of British archives. Today, only 6 production stills and contemporary press clippings survive, offering tantalizing glimpses of Hitchcock's early visual style, high-angle compositions, dramatic chiaroscuro, and pioneering camera movements. Film historians have reconstructed the film's narrative from censor records and reviews, piecing together a story of forbidden love and mountaintop tragedy that presaged themes Hitchcock would revisit in Rebecca in 1940 and Vertigo in 1958. As archivist Peter Cook notes, the Mountain Eagle's absence speaks to both the fragility of nitrate film and the industry's early disregard for preservation. Despite rumors of a private collector holding a print, no verifiable copy has surfaced. The film's ghostly status amplifies Hitchcock's legend, ensuring that his lost masterpiece remains one of cinema's most enduring mysteries. If you're craving more mysteries of lost films or celebrity rebellions, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because Hollywood's vault of secrets is always locked until we pick it. Drop a comment. Which celeb's hidden film do you wish would resurface?